It will also give you time to know how much time you have to plan, because 15 minutes is a lot of time to plan. Some of you are really good at it. Some of you already know what you're doing. You might not need all 15 minutes. If you don't, then start. But make sure before you start writing that you have done 3 things. You have a thesis statement, you have contextualization, and you have those documents divided up into those 3 categories that you have in your thesis statement. That's the goal of your planning. I'm going to write that on the board for you so that you, when you go into this on Friday, you have structure. Those of you that remember last year, and outside information. See, I forgot outside information. That was the thing that I made you the big nameplate for, is to remember outside information. And that's the hard part, because your adrenaline is going. Your brain is telling you, you're stupid. I don't know anything. Why did I take this class? How much longer till I have to get out of here? But your brain knows stuff, especially if you have a study guide and you have studied. So I'm going to tell you people this, you very smart, intelligent people who have gotten to this point in your academic studies, save for a few of you, and I know who those people are, without studying. Yeah. Because you're smart. And I am telling you, you have to study. You have to. There's no way you can remember all this crap unless you study. There's just no way. Your brain is not that awesome. Your brain is not that awesome. I can tell you, it is not. Your brains are great vessels to put in information, but those vessels sometimes are sieves. There's not a stopper at the bottom. It lets it out. You need to put the stopper back in. That's called a study guide. Whether, again, you buy it from school and not have to pay tax, shipping, your $15. This is the last call for getting that study guide. I'm placing the order tomorrow, so please let me know. If you don't have the money and you know that you want one, tell me so that we can get it ordered. But you need to practice. If you don't do anything else but use that study guide for the 4 practice tests that are in there, just so that you see how much you need to study, you need to study. There are multiple things in that study guide to help the way you study. Some of you are linear math people. I like a timeline. I don't need to read paragraphs of stuff. I need a timeline, and I can see it. There are timelines in this book that would be perfect for many of you that think like that. That would not be me. But I know there are people in here that would benefit from looking at all this stuff, not in chunks and paragraphs and reading and all that stuff. Just give me one sentence. One sentence. One sentence. That's not me. Those of you that do well with reading and recall, like I can remember, and if you're like this, you know who you are. This is me. When I read stuff, I can recall where it's on the page. That's how my brain functions. It helps me to settle. Okay, I remember where it's at. It's right there. It was under that picture. Yep, that's it. The study guide has that. For those of you that need pictures, there are pictures. Not a lot, but there's pictures. It will be a good $15. Now, you can go to Books A Million and buy it yourself. Please, again, make sure that you're buying Princeton. The other ones are just not as good. Those of you that really want more, I don't buy the more expensive one that gives you online access to a gazillion tests. I don't know why you need more than 5, but you can buy that one as well. So please think about this. I know some of you feel there's no way that you can pass. I have people every year, and I have people in here that I called to tell them that they passed, that were shocked. I passed. Because when you take the test, it defeats you. It is a hard test. And I'm going to also say to you, as we will vote next week where we're going to go for lunch, I would especially this year when absences don't count, I would ask to be signed out of school 6th and 7th hour. Just don't come back. We'll all go to lunch, come back, and if your parents agree, go home, because you're going to be. How many of you have Mr. O'Brien 6th and 7th hour? Because he goes on, he will teach that day because he doesn't care, and your brain will be. But I want you to know that you all have the ability to pass this test. It is the same things that we have done over and over and over. The only thing we haven't done is the LEQ, and that's just an essay, and we'll practice that. But you all have all the skills, all the requirements. I have taught you that. What I cannot teach you is the motivation to study and get those credit that you will add. You have the potential to leave this class with 9 credit hours. 9 credit hours. A normal semester is 15. So on top of all the other dual credit classes that you're taking, 9 credit hours. So what that means is you've got 3 credit hours when you pass APUSH, when you pass that exam, that you can apply to something else, because you're going to get History 101 and History 102. You're done with history unless you want to be a historian. But you're done with history. When you start wherever you're at, it doesn't matter where you go, you are done with U.S. history. You might have to take, except my people that passed AP Euro last year, you might have to take a Western Civ class, but you're done. That 3 hours can be applied to something else. We spent my entire ACT class getting our brains off sadness, talking about the fact that you have to take PE in college. For some of you, that's exciting. For most of you, that's not fun. Those 3 hours can be applied to PE. Those 3 hours can be applied to a fine arts. You have to take a fine art. You have to take a music class. You have to take an art class. You have to. Who wants to take art class? Because this is not art class like here. This is taught by professors of art who expect you to make art. I had the most hideous art professor ever. I cannot make art. And when you're trying to do well in college and an art class keeps you from doing well, it's not fun. When you're taking physics and you want an A and you get an A, and you take art and you want an A and you get a C+. C+. How many of you would appreciate a C+? I'm the same people as you. Some of you might, a little more than some of you. I was very, very driven. I don't know if that's a surprise. I don't know. I know. I'm sorry, Alex. I shot an arrow to you, but maybe it was an arrow tip with motivation. How about that? I'm sorry. Here, motivation. I'm sorry. So my motivation is not to have to take art class and get a C+. A C+. A C+.
Is that the only C+ you got in college?
Yes, it's the only C+ I ever got in my life. I've never gotten a C+, ever.
Like a report card, or like ever?
Ever. I've never got a C+.
Like on a test?
Oh. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I got C+ in calculus.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's what I meant.
Yeah. But not as a final grade.
Yeah.
No. Oh, gosh, no. Oh, I would have been in deep dog doo-doo if I'd have brought home a C+.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
So on the day of the exam, you said we could leave early, or you recommend
I did not say you could leave early. I recommend that you ask your parents if you could leave
No,
early.
my mom won't care, but for sports, are we still allowed to practice?
I forget about that.
Yeah, that's
That you won't. You won't. You wouldn't be able to practice.
Even though I'm there.
Like, and even if we're there half the
Someone's
day.
got to hit that.
If what?
Yeah, I mean, if we're there the first half of the day, you can't.
I don't know. I'll ask Otto. But I don't know. All right. So
What day
that
is the
takes
exam?
care of all of those things. Let me find where we're
What day
at.
is the exam?
Yes.
Is the LAQ the same for APUSH and AP Euro?
Same.
Okay.
Yeah. You will be fine. You will be Same. Okay. So we are about to get to women's suffrage. Finn, you probably need a study guide for AP Euro. Okay. Oh, think about the one last year. Okay. That, for me, if you're going to pick any two to do, pick that. Okay. All right. Questions, anyone, about all that time I just wasted? Okay. Part of my job, I think, as an academic teacher is to do two things. Build you up, buttercup. And then, did you guys ever play? Yes. I'm going to tell you how they ever play that game with the dandelions. Mama had a baby and the head popped off. That's the other part. Yeah. Okay. You pick the dandelion and you wrap the stem around it, and so that was be popping off your head saying you are smart but not that smart, and you need to make sure that you study. And I know that it's hard, and that's why I started this with all of you got here because you're smart, and you all got here with your smarts without having to study. This is why this year is so hard for you, because this is a year that you have to. Yes, Scott.
I didn't pass the exam. How many hours did I get?
If you don't, why do you want to keep asking me? No, you are. It's 6 hours. You are getting, Scott, you're getting history 101 and 102, but don't rest laurels on that. Don't just be happy with that. Don't just be happy with that. Do not. Because there is stuff attached to when your transcript is sent and you've got those passing scores. Okay? Hey, people, you should know that your AP scores go on your transcript. Not your passing AP scores. Your passing AP scores go on your transcript. That is something that's important to see. And last but not least, the two, and I never know the correct verbiage, the two most taken AP exams are AP Lit, which we do not have, and APUSH.
Does AP Lit test hard?
It is not. And there are many people that I recommend that read to take AP Lit. And when I say read, that means you have to have read a lot. Those of you that read a lot, looking in the back there, if you read a lot, I would highly encourage you to take AP Lit. And I will tell you what AP Lit is. For those of you that read, AP Lit, they don't have a reading list. So when you take that as a class, the teacher can assign anything. But what will happen in AP Lit is you will get a prompt that says, compare the protagonist in Moby Dick with a recent book that you've read. So you have to be well read.
Is it like a test like this one, like multiple choice? Like
Yes, but more writing. And if you want to take it, I highly encourage you to take it because it's for free.
Yeah.
If you want to take the AP Lit class, AP Lit test next year, I would highly encourage you to take it. It's for free. The English and science are always free. Mr. Stitzel always, and that's one of the last things that we do in this class is send a thank you note to Mr. Stitzel because they find money to pay for this test that we don't have to pay for. But I would highly encourage any of you that read, the only thing you need to make sure that you're comfortable and familiar with are those words: protagonist, antagonist, a climax of the story, plot, that kind of stuff that I think you're well versed in. All right. So on page 22, women's suffrage. This is always a hopeful DBQ. This will be the time period that we're still in the Wilson one, that APUSH and AP Euro teachers around the country start to place bets and wagers on what the DBQ is going to be. We do have bets, not monetary bets, but no money bets. We haven't had one about women's suffrage, and it's the anniversary So I am holding strong on this. The only thing that keeps me from like putting out on our listserv that this is my thing is that everybody teaches this very well, right? Everyone teaches this really, I hope, really well. Last year, my bet before we went into our crazy test was Manifest Destiny, which a lot of us won because Manifest Destiny was one of the topics. But women's suffrage for us really begins in Seneca Falls in 1848 with Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Lucretia Mott, and Susan B. Anthony. One of the other things that was awesome right before we went into lockdown, I don't know that anybody went on our field trip to see the play that we saw of Susan B. Anthony and Frederick Douglass. It was amazingly outstanding about Susan B. Anthony and her friendship with Frederick Douglass, and it was awesome. Here's what we need to know about these movements, and this is something that is true for every single movement in the United States, every single movement, beginning all the way back with the Revolution. Change in the United States is done in a dual process. First, through any kind of legislative means necessary, right? So when petitions, signing papers. So when we think about the revolution, we started the revolution with petitions and boycotts and the writs of the committees of committees of correspondence, writing things, and that didn't get us anywhere. And what we moved to next was the Sons of Liberty and tarring and feathering and dumping tea. Not that any of that is legal, correct, but that's how movements move and make change, right? So the women's movement did the same thing. The women's movement worked within the legislative assemblies to try to change papers, worked to create committees, joined the National Women's Suffrage Association. There are many states that had passed statehood suffrage, that women could vote in state and local elections. There's 19 of them. Most of them will be Western states, but still not a national amendment for women to vote. So Carrie Chapman Catt will be the most effective, and she is working to win Congress. What happens on the top of page 23 is Alice Paul. Alice Paul is a young, Oxford-educated woman, incredibly smart, who says to the National American Women's Suffrage Association, what you're doing is not working. We need change. And that change becomes militant. Every movement becomes militant. The civil rights movement is going to be the same thing. Dr. Martin Luther King gives us passive resistance. Don't fight back. Sit in this seat. Sit at this lunch counter. Let people pour ketchup on your head. Let people put mustard in your face. Let people pour sugar on you. Don't fight back. Resist, resist. And nothing changed until we get a group of people that push the boundaries of accepted behavior when the government finally has to say or do and make change. That's every single movement. Every single movement in our country has some form of, and I use the word violence loosely, I don't mean violence like killing, but violent behavior. For Alice Paul and these women, the violent behavior doesn't to us appear violent, but they're just going to picket in front of the White House. They're going to chain themselves to the gates of the White House. They're going to get arrested. And in that arresting for things like blocking a sidewalk and causing a public nuisance, they are not going to pay their fines and they're going to go to jail. And in going to jail, they will be force-fed. They will go on hunger strikes and they'll be force-fed. Tubes will be stuck down their nose and they will be force-fed. As a result of that, we will get the 19th Amendment that passed in 1920, giving women full access. The bill, this is the part that makes me get all verklempt. The bill is put forth in the House by Jeanette Rankin, a female representing the great state of Wyoming. That is the most awesome part of that. Bills have to be put forward by representatives. All bills have to originate in the House. So she was the one that put the bill out. She also will put forth an Equal Rights Amendment in 1920, our first attempt at an equal rights movement. The Constitution does not protect the status of women. There is nothing in the Constitution that gives women equal rights. Zero, nada, nothing. Nothing. And when we get really fast and furious at the end of this month, when we're up to the 1970s, and we talk about the Equal Rights Amendment that's placed in the 1970s, again, it will not be passed. And the biggest person putting a full stop on that will be a woman named Phyllis Schlafly, saying that our femininity will be taken away from us if we have an Equal Rights Amendment. The House just passed, there's a time limit put on bills. House just passed currently to remove the time stop. So hopefully by the time the ladies in this class reach full maturity, we will have an Equal Rights Amendment that place women in equal standing. African Americans are going to make a few gains during the Progressive era. We're going to look at one in particular at the bottom of page 23, W.E.B. Du Bois. Booker T. Washington is one of the two African American that we look at during this Progressive era. Booker T. Washington was a slave, and he becomes the founder of Tuskegee Institute. He supports to African American hard work. And what Booker T. Washington says is, in order, and I am paraphrasing, in order for white people to like us, we got to work hard. For a lot of African Americans, that sounded good. But for W.E.B. Du Bois, that was not something that he thought of. Tuskegee Institute at that time was a vocational school. So if you went to Tuskegee, you didn't get a degree in law, you got trade skills. W.E.B. Du Bois said that's ludicrous. W.E.B. Du Bois was from Massachusetts. He was Harvard educated, and he said, we demand our same rights and laws under the Constitution. Called Washington Uncle Tom for condemning blacks to manual labor and perpetual inferiority. And this is again where all these movements are connected. Seneca Falls is in the Niagara region. W.E. Du Bois has that same type of a movement called the Niagara movement. So the African American movement are picking up ties from the women's movement and saying an immediate end to segregation, immediate end to segregation and discrimination in labor unions, courts, public accommodations. Demanded that the talented 10th of the Black community be given full and immediate access to all things. Even Du Bois, as radical as he is in that time period, is still only asking for the top 10. Not everybody, just the top 10. On the top of page 24, the NAACP is formed after race riots in 1909. Please underline this, that the NAACP is founded by white progressives. White progressives. Jane Addams, John Dewey, Mr. Howells, and Villard formed the NAACP in 1910. White progressives. Du Bois is the director of publicity and editor of their newspaper. The NAACP adopted many of the goals of the Niagara movement, and many advances were made. Black literacy cut in half, Black ownership of land increased by 10%. Wilson. a white supremacist in 1910. 1910. His wife, even more so. His 2-volume history of U.S. is notorious for its racist views of Reconstruction. Wilson greatly admired D.W. Griffith's Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation is the beginnings of a recreation of the South and the Civil War. And this is when the South changes this whole idea that so many people have bought into, millions of people have bought into, that the Civil War was fought for our heritage and a glorious cause, and creating this myth around the idea of we just fought a war so we can own people. That doesn't play too well in the 20th century, so we got to fix this around. And people still throw out the idea of Southern heritage. There is a Southern heritage. It's not surrounded by a battle flag. And again, every part of my DNA is Southern. Every single part of it. Don't have any that is not. My Texas DNA, my North Carolina DNA, and the idea that somehow there is a difference that makes it not about owning people is what we are looking at in this, especially in the 1920s, when they try to wrap this up in a big round fur ball and make it about states' rights and a glorious cause. And the glorious cause is we want to own people to do our work. The only time I ever have walked out of a class, like got up and walked out and made a big, not like I was going to get sick, but like I am leaving this class, was another fine art class I had taken in college called Film Appreciation, which you would think would be a fun class, but no, it is not, because I had to watch Birth of a Nation, and I refuse to watch that. It is the most racist movie in the history of racist movies. Horrible movie. And it's even more horrible when you're sitting in a college in North Carolina with a whole bunch of white people watching that movie. And I protested before the teacher when she put it on the syllabus, like, why are we watching this movie? Well, we have to watch silence. Good grief, there's a gazillion good silent movies. Metropolis, the most iconic. You can drop this class, Miss Payton. No, thank you. I don't want to drop this class. I need this class. Well, you're going to watch what's on the syllabus. No, I'm not. And I've tried to watch it again as an adult with like a bitter frame of mind of not this radical person on a Southern campus trying to make a stand kind of thing. It's horrible. It's horrific. It's horrific. Glorified KKK. Fairly certain I was probably sitting in that class of people who were members of the KKK. Wilson presided over accelerated segregation in the federal bureaucracy. So everything that Teddy Roosevelt as a progressive did to integrate the federal government was overdone or overturned by Wilson. African Americans remained segregated in the federal government until the 1960s. Guess who was born in the 1960s? That'd be me. I do not want you to think that 1960s was forever ago. I am old, 57, but I was born in the 1960s, a person living in front of you that's not decrepit, I don't think. Still tries to pretend like I know what's happening, going on, even though I don't. 1960s, the federal government that represents all people of the United States of America was segregated. African Americans effectively left out of the Democratic Party until the 1930s. And that will be an important switch. And that 1930s is going to be Franklin Roosevelt. That's what's going to bring African Americans into the Democratic Party. Darker side of progressives criticized for attempting to impose their middle class WASP values on all of society. And remember, the key word of that WASP is Protestant. What happens if you weren't, right? Took Native American children from their families, placed them in boarding schools, claimed, where's my other part? on the top of page 25. Progressives became increasingly nativist. Attempt to legislate morality, that's prohibition. Presided over the Red Scare, we'll get that in just a second. And then also obviously leads us into World War I, which I'm going to briefly begin as we flip the page to World War I, 1914, 1918. All right, so we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about how the war started in 1914. Is that the one what we got? Is that where we start? Yeah, okay. What we're going to start with World War I is at the bottom of the page, the United States is neutral. The war starts in 1914. The United States is not going to get involved until 1917. So for 3 years, we are neutral and we watch. Those of you that remember, this is where we kind of ended up in AP Euro. And I think it was Sophie, right, that was telling us that her dad was mad about if World War I was a bar fight assignment, where at the end it just says the United States comes in and says we're the winner. That's essentially what we do. What has been, and everybody, I hope we all get it, what has been the foreign policy of the United States in regards to Europe since George Washington? Neutrality, right? Neutrality, stay out. We have stayed out. We have remained neutral. And so that is the test again. What are we going to do? The only other thing that we need to talk about at the beginning of World War I is there is no bad guy. For those of you that don't have a strong knowledge about World War I, there is not a bad guy, right? This happens due to an assassination because a car took the wrong turn and the Archduke got shot after the mayor told him, if you come here, you're going to be shot. You and your wife are going to be shot. They don't make the correct, they make the correct changes, but their driver doesn't speak German. He speaks Czech. He takes the regular route. He gets shot, and we start a war about that assassination. There's not a bad person. The United States has a problem because we are a nation of immigrants. We have a large, giant population of Germans. We have a large, giant population of Anglo-Saxons from Great Britain. Who do we pick? This will be the year, World War I will be the year that Sullivan High School stops teaching German because we can't do that. So both sides in Europe try to gain the United States' support. Of course, they want our support. Why? Because we got millions of young men to fight. Millions of young men to fight in this war. Britain's going to use propaganda. Germany, Austria count on natural sympathies because we have so many German Americans. Let's flip the page. On page 2, one of the most important parts, look at D. Most Americans were anti-German from the outset. Most of us wanted to stay out of the war. President Wilson is going to win his second term based on the idea he kept us out of the war. Then he takes us right in. Why do we want to stay out? Well, one, we don't want to fight. We don't have anything in this fight. This is a fight among monarchs, kings. That's not our stuff. We have nothing in that fight. The other big reason, look in the middle of page 2, number C2, a boost. We can make a lot of stuff. And we can sell a lot of stuff. And if you're neutral, you can sell to everybody. You can sell to Germans. You can sell to British. You can sell to Austria. You can sell to France. And that's what we do. $2.4 billion. The other part that's going to play a crucial role in the next 20 years, JP Morgan lends the Allies $3 billion. $3 billion to destroy Europe. When Europe is destroyed in 1919, who's going to pay back those $3 billion? Can you pay it back? Nope. And what comes next? Roaring happy 20s, and then a global crushing depression. Are you guys reading Great Gatsby yet? Okay. Okay.
Next week.
Okay, so this is perfect. So we'll get the 20s before you get Great Gatsby. Because the 20s have the perpetual legacy of happy, happy times. They are not happy times. They're a bunch of young people that say, this world has gone, and I'm going to say a bad word that actually I'll say it like my granny says it. This world has gone to HE double toothpick in a handbasket, and we might as well not follow any rules. And that, when you're reading Gatsby, if Mrs. Hollis does not tell you that, you need to keep that in the back of your mind. These are people that saw the world destroy itself, destroy the best of people with machines, gas.